Hi, I'm Megan Chittum, and I'm here to talk to you today about transition planning. When you're a student with an IEP, it's important to start thinking about your future. This usually starts around age 16 unless your IEP team decides it needs to start meeting earlier. Before we get into that, let's talk about the difference in special education versus the American with Disabilities Act. IDEA, which is Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, was revamped in 2004. The difference between this and the 1990 American with Disabilities Act is the American with Disabilities Act was a civil rights law to prohibit discrimination based on a disability in employment, public service, and accommodations. IDEA was an educational act to provide federal financial assistance to state and local agencies to guarantee special education. IDEA is for kids under the ages 3 to 21 that are found eligible for one of three specific disability categories who need education. This IDEA provides accommodation as a result of a comprehensive evaluation. The 1990 Americans with Disabilities Act is for anyone with a disability who has a physical or mental impairment that affects their daily life. They have to have a record of such impairment, and they have to have found regarded to have such an impairment. They also provide reasonable accommodations such as redesigning of equipment, giving aids, providing communication in alternative forms, modifying tests, or redesigning services to accessibility locations to make locations more accessible. IDEA also wants transitions to focus on secondary education. The IDEA law says results-oriented process to facilitate the child's movement from school to post-school practices. Specifically, post-secondary education, vocational education, and continuing in adult education needs to be provided for options for students. Of students that have a disability, 87% received accommodations in high school, but only 36% of people with disabilities disclosed their disability at a college level, and only around 25% of those received accommodations. The most common accommodation given in college was extended testing time. Some best practices are for teachers to encourage kids who want to go to college to take the most rigorous academic plan of study possible. They need to help develop students' non-academic skills such as self-advocacy and self-determination. Teachers should be optimistic. If your teachers are optimistic, it increases the effectiveness of students being able to express their strengths, needs, goals, and the ability to request an accommodation. The students need to be involved in their own IEP process. If they have been involved in their own IEP process, they have a greater sense of self-efficacy, know their disability rights and accommodations, and are more self-confident. Students also need to know who to contact at the college. I had a fourth grader today come up and tell me, I need more help in science because I can't understand what I'm reading. And I loved it. His self-advocacy was amazing. Also, students, teachers that are focusing on post-secondary education goals, the students need to be learned how to be critical of open source materials. They need to learn how to function in virtual learning communities. They need to know how course management systems work, and they need to know about social networking, not that they'll need any help there. There's a website at the bottom of this screen for some help if your teachers are needed in that area. Students are really excited about employment and work skills. They need to know a lot about them. Students need to be in an inclusive placement and career technical education. Those who spend 80% or more of their time in a gen ed and inclusive placement are twice as likely to enroll and succeed in post-secondary education. Teachers need to do long-term planning when they're thinking about transitioning people to jobs. In elementary school, there needs to be an emphasis on work ethic. There needs to be integrated academics, and their work needs to be surrounded by creativity and innovation. When you move into middle school and high school, they need to start exposing kids to realistic job requirements. Kids need assistance in identifying and pursuing appropriate post-secondary career plans, and they need to prepare for the transition from school to work and adult life. Gen Ed and SPED teachers need to be proactive when teaching these things. Kids need to know about themselves, their own strengths and weaknesses, information about the work world and career planning. Curriculum will need to be emphasizing problem-solving strategies, coping behaviors, adaptability, as well as specific technical skills. Students need to learn how to take initiative, recognize career-related opportunities, and assume responsibility for lifelong learning and need to learn how to be flexible. Kids need a work ethic. The workforce is looking for kids who are perceptive, honest, who can appreciate things, who are conscientious, likable, and show enthusiasm. One of the newer traits that employment is looking for is innovation. Students need to know how to be decision makers, problem solvers, and know how to apply technology in new ways to address new problems. Also important when kids are transitioning, they need to know about independent living skills. You need to consider a student's needs, interests, and preferences, and these can be considered quality of life descriptors. Kids need to be able to live independently. They need to learn how to have their own residence, need to learn how to manage their money. They need to be involved in the community. They need to learn to have hobbies, and they need to care about their health. Kids should have self-determination and self-advocacy. It's important how a person with a disability sees themselves. It's the beginning of self-esteem. That's a factor in success. There's a correlation between if a student believes they can do something and their outcomes. Students need to know about their own disability. They need to know their rights. They need to know their needs and what's best for them. They need to know the community resources and be able to advocate for themselves. They need to be aware of the reasons and strategies to disclose their disability, when to tell and who to tell they have problems. And students with disabilities should develop self-awareness, be proactive, perseverance, goal setting, use effective social support systems, and have emotional coping strategies. Students with disabilities, as they transition, need to learn to have healthy relationships. Those who work together in an IEP to develop these things are transition specialists, vocation personnel, school psychologists, school counselors, families. Thank you.